The season finale of The Last of Us, I think, took many of us by surprise. And yet, at the same time, I don't think we were all really that shocked. For those of you who haven't watched the season finale yet, well, spoiler alert, but for those of us who have, let's dive into it. The Last of Us is a show that, for all intents and purposes, looks and acts like a zombie movie, even though they weren't allowed to use that word. But for most of those movies, the goal has always been to survive, and a secondary subplot is to find a cure. The Last of Us has the struggle to survive and the struggle of humanity in spades. It is gruesome and horrible at times, but it also has some very sweet moments that can represent the best of humanity. There's a lot here about found family, but one thing, to my knowledge, that most people in those zombie stories don't tend to do is to choose each other over the greater good. And to be clear, that is exactly what Joel did here. He chose Ellie over the greater good. He decided that Ellie's life was more important than saving humanity. Marlene was not wrong for what she was doing. None of the Fireflies were. They were killing a child, yes, but thought that in doing so could ensure that every other child on this planet could live. It was a smaller sacrifice for the greater good. And yet, our protagonist, Joel, chose Ellie over the greater good. And that isn't a stance most protagonists in stories take. It's not very often that the rebel leader who is trying to take down oppressive governments and find a cure for humanity is the antagonist. In most stories, Marlene would be our hero. Joel's decision to save Ellie over humanity is the culmination of a character arc for him that we had been witnessing from the very beginning. Let's get into it. We all know Joel's type. He is a tough, silent, strong man with past trauma that makes it difficult for him to warm up to others. We know that losing Sarah and what he did in the immediate years after the apocalypse made him a stone-cold killer. But we also witness a slow thaw of Joel's character as he spends more time with Ellie, as her obnoxious puns and jokes slowly wears him down and he grows to care for her. We can see that most clearly after Joel and Ellie leave Kansas City and make their way to Tommy. Joel begins to teach Ellie how to shoot and survive and dedicates time to her learning the essentials of survival, something he was not willing to do when he saw her as just cargo. And then we get to the panic attacks. Joel has been through a lot through the years, and even more through the months of traveling with Ellie. PTSD is all too common, and so are panic attacks. And we can see on screen that Joel is beginning to experience a lot of them, and most of them seem to revolve around Ellie in some way. Reasons behind Joel's decision to rescue Ellie can be traced back to the beginning of the series when the soldier was ordered to shoot Joel and Sarah. The plague had just begun. The cities were overrun, there were hundreds of thousands of people infected, and not enough soldiers. Sarah was injured, and so they couldn't actually verify whether or not Joel and Sarah were infected. They didn't have enough information about the plague, they didn't know how to test it. The soldier being ordered to shoot Joel and Sarah can be seen as an act of cruelty, or as an act for the greater good, to try and protect the people that they knew for certain were not infected. The order was wrong, but the government didn't have proper containment. They couldn't take chances. That was to say, Sarah and Joel were shot at for the sake of the greater good. And now, Joel is taking Ellie to the Fireflies for the sake of the greater good. This has much clearer stakes than what happened in the beginning with Sarah and Joel. But we do have that Joel is in charge of another child, and her life is in his hands and at stake based on what he does and how he reacts. Ellie was supposed to be cargo, but she's not anymore. Joel likes her. At this point in time, Joel had already begun seeing Ellie as a daughter. As Joel said to Tommy, he didn't feel like he could properly protect her. That with his panic attacks and age, he was too weak, despite the promises that he made to Tess. With this scene, we can tell that protecting Ellie was far more important to him than just keeping his promises. And after the events at Silver Lake, we can see that the ice has completely thawed. Joel tortured and killed men in order to find out Ellie's location. And even if Ellie never told Joel everything that happened to her, he is aware enough to know horrible things occurred, and clearly, Ellie is hurt. And in this, we see a complete role reversal. Joel is the one doing all of the talking for once. He is cracking jokes, and he's discussing inane things. He sounds like Ellie. He was trying to get Ellie to open up and be the child that she should be, that she used to be. And Joel is finally managing to get Ellie back out of her shell when the Fireflies attack. And here's where I think Marlene really makes her mistake. It's a simple mistake. How could she have known how close Joel and Ellie have grown? And so Marlene's mistake was very simple. She didn't let Joel say goodbye to Ellie. Joel had woken up in a strange place again. Ellie was missing again. And someone was telling him he couldn't see Ellie anymore because they were going to kill her for the greater good of humanity. It's a great cause. But Joel had made too many sacrifices. Joel had killed too many to be told no. Not in this. He had already warmed up to Ellie. He had already killed people for her, for the sake of his family, to never see Ellie again. And I think he also respected Ellie and her decisions too much to let her do this without her explicit consent. And I think that Joel never demanded that because he also knows that Ellie would have likely agreed to it. But Joel can't let her go. He's still too afraid to lose her as one of the last members of his family that he has left. So while there was still a possibility of this not working, I think Marlene should have agreed to let Joel and Ellie see each other. Maybe given Ellie the choice and the chance to say goodbye. Maybe that would have been enough to get Joel to let Ellie make the choice to sacrifice herself. But Marlene didn't give them a choice. She wanted to spare Ellie the fear of death, and she did not trust Joel. Unfortunately, that just made her one of the many people recently who were keeping Ellie and Joel apart. We can see the methodological way Joel decides to take down the Fireflies. He is cool. He is collected. There is no doubt there. There is no uncertainty that this was the wrong path. Joel had always prioritized his family. We saw that in the beginning when the apocalypse began. He made no move to help anyone except Tommy and Sarah. And now he had decided that Ellie was family. Joel's family is worth the greater good. It always had been. This was the apex of a character arc long since coming. Ellie is family. Therefore, she is worth the greater good. But in Joel and Marlene's choices, they both took away Ellie's. When you think about it, Ellie hasn't had too much agency in the entire show. She had always been carted off from one place to another. Some of the only choices she has actively made was to save Joel and to stick with him, even though it wasn't her choice to go with Joel in the first place. In the last scenes of the finale, we see Joel has completely opened up. He talks about Sarah for the first time and does so extensively, all but telling Ellie that he considers her his daughter too. But he made the same choice that Marlene did. He chose to lie to Ellie. They both wanted to protect her and to not cause her pain. But Ellie may be rude, and she may act like an idiot at times, but she has never been a fool. And she knows that Joel is lying to her. In season 2, I know we're going to see the aftermath of Joel's decision. He may love Ellie, but in saving her life, he may have lost her.